The box had been sitting on the hall table for 3 days before my aunt picked it up, turned it over once, and dropped it into the recycling bin. "It's junk," she said, without even looking at me. "Your grandmother had a hoarding problem. We're not keeping every little thing she touched." I watched the cardboard lid flutter as it landed on top of a pile of old newspapers. My grandmother had pressed that box into my hands the morning of her funeral reception. No, not the morning of the funeral. The morning before, she had called me into her bedroom while everyone else was still asleep, while the house smelled like coffee and that lavender hand cream she'd used my entire life, and she had held the box out to me with both hands like it weighed something. "Don't open it here," she'd whispered. "Wait until you're alone." She died 6 hours later. The hospice nurse said it was peaceful. I wasn't in the room. I didn't fish the box out of the recycling bin right away. I waited until my aunt went to make tea, and then I did it quickly, stuffing it into my coat pocket. My heart hammering the way it does when you're doing something that should be completely legal, but still feels like theft. My aunt had a way of making everything feel like theft. I was 28 years old and I still felt like a child in that house. The box stayed in my coat pocket for 2 days. I'd reach in sometimes and just feel the edges of it. Small, cardboard, slightly worn at the corners, tied with a piece of kitchen twine that my grandmother must have saved from something. She saved everything. My aunt called it hoarding. I called it a woman who lived through enough uncertainty that she never threw away anything that still had use in it. I opened it alone in my apartment in Halifax, sitting on the floor of my kitchen, because that's where I'd ended up after walking through the door, still in my coat, still carrying the weight of the last 10 days on me like a second skin. Inside was a letter, folded in thirds, and underneath the letter, a key. I read the letter first. My grandmother's handwriting was small and careful, the kind of handwriting that belongs to a generation that was taught penmanship like it mattered. "My darling," she wrote, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and your aunt has probably already started reorganizing things. Don't be angry with her. She's afraid of what she doesn't understand, and she has always been afraid of me. I want you to go to Coastal Heritage Credit Union on Barrington Street. Ask for the branch manager, not a teller, the manager, brings this letter and the key. Tell them you're Eleanor Marsh's granddaughter. They'll know what to do. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was waiting for the right time, and then I ran out of time, which is what happens when you wait. Everything I have is yours. It always was." Grancy sat on my kitchen floor for a long time after that. Long enough that the light changed. My grandmother's name was Eleanor Marsh. She'd been a school teacher for 31 years, and after that she'd volunteered at the library, and she'd grown tomatoes in her backyard in Dartmouth that were, without question, the best tomatoes I have ever eaten in my life. She drove a 10-year-old Civic and she bought her clothes at Value Village, and she never, in all the years I knew her, talked about money. I had no idea what was waiting for me on Barrington Street. My mother thought the keys was probably to a storage locker. Some furniture, maybe. Old books. She said this in the same tone she used when she was trying to be kind while also managing expectations, which she had been doing my whole life. My mother was good at a lot of things. Hoping for too much wasn't one of them. My aunt didn't know I had the box. I decided to keep it that way. I called Coastal Heritage Credit Union the next morning. They confirmed they had an account associated with the name Eleanor Marsh, and that there was, in fact, a branch manager I could speak with. And that yes, I should come in, and yes, sooner was better than later. That last part sat oddly with me. Sooner is better than later. I didn't sleep well that night. I brought my partner with me. We've been together for 4 years. He works in civil engineering. He is steadier than anyone I have ever met, and when I showed him the letter, he read it twice and then said, "Okay, we'll go first thing. No questions, no skepticism, just okay, we'll go." I don't take that for granted. I know how rare it is. The credit union on Barrington Street was small and quiet. Dark wood paneling, the smell of old carpet, a row of teller windows with only 2 open, a security guard near the door who nodded at us when we came in. There was a watercolor of the Halifax harbor on the wall, slightly crooked. I asked for the branch manager. The teller, young, maybe 23, with small hoop earrings, looked at my face and then looked at the letter I was holding and picked up her phone without saying anything. The branch manager came out from a back office. She was in her 60s, wearing a blazer the color of cedar, and when she saw me she stopped walking for just a moment. Just a half second. The kind of pause you don't notice unless you're looking for it, and I was looking for everything that morning. "You must be Eleanor's granddaughter," she said. "I am. Come with me, please." We followed her into a small office with a window that faced the street. She closed the door behind us and sat down and folded her hands on the desk, and I noticed that her hands were very still, the way hands are when someone is making a deliberate effort to appear calm. "I want to begin by saying that your grandmother was a remarkable woman," she said. "I've been the manager here for 11 years and I knew her for all of them. She came in every 6 months like clockwork, always brought shortbread at Christmas." I felt my throat tighten. That was so entirely her. "I need to tell you some things," the manager continued, "and I need you to stay in your seat while I tell them to you." My partner put his hand on the back of my chair. "Your grandmother opened a registered retirement savings plan with us in 1987, she said. She named you as sole beneficiary in 2003, when you were approximately 7 years old. She updated that designation every 5 years to confirm it, most recently in 2021. I had known none of this, not a word of it. She also," the manager said, and here she paused, not for effect, but because she seemed to actually need a moment, "made consistent contributions to a non-registered investment account over a period of 36 years. She managed it conservatively, but she managed it. GICs, some dividend-paying equities, bonds. She reinvested everything." "How much?" I heard myself ask. The manager turned her monitor around to face me. The number had a comma after the first digit, and then 3 more digits, and then another comma, and then 3 more digits. I didn't understand it for a second. My brain just refused. And then I understood it, and I reached out and grabbed my partner's hand without looking at him, and he held it. And I stared at that number on the screen and I thought, she drove a 10-year-old Civic. It was just over $340,000 in the RRSP and just over $280,000 in the non-registered account. Over $600,000 in total, accumulated quietly, steadily, over 36 years, by a woman who bought her winter coats at Value Village and never once mentioned any of it to anyone. "There is one complication," the manager said, and something in her voice made me look up from the screen. She slid a piece of paper across the desk to me. It was a beneficiary change form, dated 14 months ago, naming my aunt as sole beneficiary of the RRSP. I looked at it for a long time. "This came to us by mail," the manager said carefully, 14 months ago, with what appeared to be your grandmother's signature." "Appeared to be," I said. "Your grandmother came in person for her regular visit 8 months ago." I showed her the form on file. She looked at it for approximately 30 seconds. The manager paused, and then she said, "That is not my signature," and then she asked me what she needed to do. The room was very quiet. "She filed a dispute with us immediately," the manager continued. "She provided a notarized statement, samples of her actual signature, and a statutory declaration attesting that she had not authorized any change to her beneficiary designations. We froze the potential change pending investigation. That investigation was ongoing at the time of her passing." She paused again. "I want to be clear. The fraudulent form has no legal effect. The original designation, you, remains in place and is valid." I thought about my aunt dropping the box into the recycling bin without looking at me. I thought about the way she'd moved through my grandmother's house those last few days, opening drawers, making lists, setting things into piles with a quiet efficiency that I'd read as grief. I thought about how she'd said, "Your grandmother had a hoarding problem," and how she'd said it in the past tense before my grandmother had even been gone 48 hours. "When did you open the dispute investigation?" my partner asked. His voice was even. He is always even. 8 months ago, the manager said. "We notified the appropriate parties that the form was under review. That notification went to the address associated with the account. My grandmother's address, I said, which my aunt has been managing since Gran went into palliative care. The manager looked at me steadily. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I drove back to Dartmouth that afternoon. My aunt was in the kitchen when I arrived. She'd already started donating things. There were boxes stacked by the back door, labeled in her handwriting, kitchenware, books, linens. She was efficient about it. She'd always been efficient. She looked up when I came in and said, "I was wondering when you'd show up," in the tone of someone who has been mildly inconvenienced. "We need to talk," I said. "I'm busy," she said. "The estate lawyer has a lot of questions and I've been dealing with it mostly alone, so if you could." "I went to Coastal Heritage today," I said. She went still. Not still like the branch manager, deliberate and controlled. Still like a person who has heard a sound they weren't expecting in a room they thought was empty. "Oh," she said. "Gran left me a letter," I said. "She left me a key. She asked me to go to the branch and speak with the manager." My aunt set down the dish she was holding. She turned to face me fully for the first time. "Your grandmother was confused in her final months," she said. The palliative team noted cognitive. "The manager showed me the dispute your grandmother filed 8 months ago," I said, "in person. Notarized, samples of her handwriting. She knew exactly what she was doing." The kitchen was very quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming. "I don't know what you think you know," my aunt said. "I know about the beneficiary change form," I said. "I know it came by mail. I know it has a signature on it that isn't Gran's signature, which Gran confirmed in person at the bank 8 months ago. I know the credit union has been investigating it. I know the original designation is still valid." My aunt's face did something complicated. "Several things, very fast. She was going to leave you nothing," she said finally. "Do you understand that? You never visited. You sent cards at Christmas and you called on birthdays and that was it. I was the one who drove her to appointments. I was the one who managed her medications. I was the one who sat with her in that hospital for 3 weeks while you were in Halifax living your life. I was working," I said. "I visited every 2 months. I called every week." "It wasn't enough," she said. And I heard in her voice something that might have been real pain underneath the anger, and I felt briefly sorry for her. And then I thought about the box in the recycling bin, and I held on to myself. "Maybe it wasn't," I said. "But what you did is fraud, and the credit union has been investigating it for 8 months, which means there is a paper trail, and Gran's statutory declaration is part of it." "I was protecting her estate," she said, and her voice had gone flat and careful, the voice of someone recalibrating. "You forged her signature. You don't know what you're talking about." "The credit union's fraud team does," I said. "They've already referred the matter to their compliance department. That's standard practice for disputed beneficiary forms. I'm not sure where it goes from here, but the branch manager suggested I speak with a lawyer before I decide how to proceed." I hadn't actually decided yet whether I was going to pursue it further. What I knew was that my grandmother had spent 8 months, in the last 8 months of her life, trying to protect what she'd built for me. She'd gone to the bank herself. She'd filed papers. She'd done everything right, and she'd still been worried enough to write me that letter and press that box into my hands before she died. She had spent 36 years saving that money, quietly, without telling anyone. She had lived modestly and she had worked, and she had paid attention, and she had done it for me. For a 7-year-old she'd decided to protect, 21 years before I ever needed protecting. My aunt left the kitchen. I heard the front door close. I stood in my grandmother's kitchen for a while after that. The light was going. Outside the back window, there were tomato plants still in their cages, dried up now, the last of November's frost having finished them off. She'd planted them in May, apparently, even knowing she might not live to harvest them. Or maybe she'd planted them because she knew she might not, because she was that kind of woman, the kind who plants things anyway. I thought about what the branch manager had said as we were leaving. She'd stood up and shaken my hand and then held it for just a moment longer than necessary, and she said, "Your grandmother asked me, the day she filed the dispute, whether I thought everything would be all right." She paused. I told her I thought so. She said, "My granddaughter will know what to do." I think she was right. The estate lawyer confirmed the following week that the beneficiary designation was valid, that the fraudulent form carried no legal weight, and that the funds would transfer to me in the normal course once the estate was finalized and probate cleared. Because the RRSP was a designated beneficiary account, it didn't pass through the will at all. It came to me directly, which meant it also bypassed any claims my aunt might have tried to make through this estate. My grandmother had known that. She had understood exactly what she was doing when she set this up. She had structured it specifically so that it could not be touched by anyone with access to her estate. She was a school teacher. She was not supposed to know things like that. But she had spent 36 years learning, quietly, on her own, in ways that nobody saw, and she had known exactly what she was doing. My aunt and I have not spoken since that afternoon in the kitchen. I don't expect that will change. I spent a long time feeling something complicated about that. Guilt, mostly, and some grief, because she was my mother's sister and she had been a part of my life. And it is strange and sad to lose a piece of a family, even a piece that was trying to take something from you. I talked to a therapist about it. I talked to my partner about it. I am trying to let myself feel the loss of it without letting it make me smaller. The money transferred in February, just as the branch manager had said it would. I sat down with a fee-only financial advisor in Halifax, someone with no commissions, no products to sell, just an hourly rate and a fiduciary duty, and we went through everything. The RRSP will be rolled into my own RRSP, which means the taxes are deferred. The non-registered funds were investing into a diversified portfolio, some in index funds, some in bonds. A small portion in a TFSA were maxing out this year's. Gran would have approved. She understood compound interest better than most people I know with economics degrees. I think about her every time I look at the account balances. I think about her driving that Civic and buying those coats at Value Village and teaching 31 years of other people's children how to read and write and think and saving quietly, steadily, with a patience that I am only beginning to understand. I have a vegetable garden now, small, just 4 raised beds on the south side of our backyard. I planted tomatoes this spring for the first time. I used the same variety she used, Brandywine, which are difficult and slow and worth every bit of effort. I talk to them the way she talked to hers, which is to say, like they can hear me, because she believed that plants could and she was right about most things. The box sits on my bookshelf now. I kept the key inside it. The branch manager gave it back to me. It had been the key to a safety deposit box Gran had kept there for years. And inside, the safety deposit box was a copy of the notarized dispute form, and a copy of my original beneficiary designation, and a photograph of the two of us from when I was 7 years old, sitting on her back steps with a bowl of tomatoes between us. I don't need the documents anymore. The lawyer has everything. But I kept the photograph. She knew I'd find it. She knew I'd go to the bank and find the manager, and that everything would be there waiting for me, because she had spent the last 8 months of her life making sure of it. I wasn't there when she died. I will carry that with me for a long time. But I was there in the ways she'd needed me to be, for longer than I knew, and she had been there for me in ways I am still discovering. She planted the tomatoes knowing she might not see the harvest. Some things you do anyway.